Lithegol the Prophecy by Josh Oelrich. Read by Josh Oelrich. Chapter 1. The Escape. Michael Brenlan rushed through his bedroom door, slamming it behind him unintentionally from the nervous energy in his body. He thought of his situation, and a combination of anger and helplessness welled up inside. He couldn't believe that his mom had told him to leave if she didn't come up to his room within 5 minutes. He instinctively glanced at his watch. It was 1:05. He thought about the crazy events of the day that had led up to that moment. He had awoken thinking it was going to be just another Saturday on their Linkston, Indiana farm. Once he finished his chores, his mother had driven him to Jeff's house. Michael thought of all the good times he had had with his goofy friend, and the pit in his stomach returned. He wondered if he would ever be able to play basketball, visit the hilarious Gatling dog at Jeff's neighbor's house, or hang out playing video games with him again. Since meeting him 3 years ago, Jeff had been part of what helped Michael feel normal and allowed him an escape from his intense training regimen at home. On the way to Jeff's house, his mother had acted nervous and distant and had shared that they would be leaving on an extended trip that night. Then the strangeness had begun. The first unsettling event happened while he was playing Jeff's new, fully immersive virtual reality game, Epic Combat. Michael's evil sensor had gone off, and he had watched through the window in horror as the United Legion soldiers dragged Jeff's neighbor Nick and his father into their SUV. Michael had always had this special ability to detect evil, and it had been going off like crazy since the United Legion soldiers arrived. When he was 3, his parents had invited some friends and acquaintances over for dinner. Michael had cried and cringed every time a certain man from the group was around him. His parents hadn't known what was going on, and then a few weeks later, the man had been caught, and it was discovered that he was a violent criminal. When Michael's dad arrived to pick him up from Jeff's, Michael had awkwardly said goodbye to his best friend, not knowing if he would ever see him again. On the way to his dad's old Camaro, a squawking crow with a gray patch had flown over from Nick's house and circled over his head. When Michael mentioned the crow to his dad, a look of panic had flared in his dad's stern blue eyes. Michael wondered what his dad knew about the crows. They were obviously significant, since their screeching was the precursor to the most terrifying door knock Michael had ever heard. He stared out at his room, trying not to think about the decision he would have to make in 5 minutes if neither of his parents came. He felt an ominous chill as he thought about what may keep them from coming. He remembered the paper his mom had mentioned and stumbled forward, his gaze falling on the Imagine Dragons band poster above his bed. He could visualize him and Jeff rocking out at that concert. How could he possibly leave his quirky friend behind? This all seemed like a bad dream. He wished he could just wake up and find everything back the way it was 3 months prior, before the United Legion arrived in Linkston. To the right of his bed was the United Legion deployment map, the pushpins scattered in thick clusters throughout the eastern United States. They were much sparser in the western half of the country. He remembered putting up the map shortly after the newly elected President of the United States, David Sampson, had deployed the United Legion troops at the start of 2025. Michael still couldn't believe that the President and his leaders had manipulated the voters and leaders of America into electing him. The Freedom Alliance group had formed shortly after the first deployment, in direct opposition to the fascist governing body, but there were way more citizens still loyal to the President and the United Legion than Michael would have ever guessed possible. A glimmer caught his eye, and he watched as the slideshow of 3D projected images from a holoframe danced across his dresser. The first video showed his stocky father steadying the 4-year-old Michael on his tiny bike. The next was he and Jeff cheering as they raised up a basketball trophy, followed by a short clip of Michael receiving his black belt in Taekwondo, his dad standing proudly next to him. Michael's childhood had basically been an immersive academic and combat training program, and his parents had always told him that a mysterious visitor had appeared and instructed them that he would become a powerful leader someday. He had often wondered if he was destined to join the Freedom Alliance. The prospect of fighting the evil United Legion soldiers invigorated him and had helped him get through the escalating rigors of his training. Michael leaned in and lifted his pillow. There was a paper there, as his mom had said there would be, and it had a bold heading that read, Destination 1. He examined it and noticed a note scribbled on the back. He recognized her tiny handwriting. When it's time, take the hidden escape route. Just pull down on the candlestick on your wall and lift up the trapdoor near the back of your closet. Be sure to pull the door down and latch it before you leave. There is a secret box and more instructions in the hidden compartment of your suitcase. You must open the box tomorrow, on your actual 16th birthday. You must fulfill your destiny, with or without us. We love you and believe in you, Michael. With love, Mom and Dad. He read the words again, unable to believe what he was seeing. So his real birthday was tomorrow, March 21st? They had always celebrated it on May 25th. But why had his parents lied to him? And what was this box he was supposed to open? What did it all mean? Michael pushed his emotions down and glanced around the room. He stopped on his antique desk, the shimmering castle screensaver on his laptop catching his eye. He had always been fascinated by castles. Something about them just made them seem otherworldly. Sometimes he felt like his only connection with the outside world was his computer, even though it was a bit old school. Most people had the latest full 3D projected wrist computer called the RipRock, or RIP for short. Not many people still owned a laptop, but his dad had set him up with a good one, with all the latest processors and enhancements. His dad had been a special forces soldier and some kind of a government agent that also specialized in computers. Michael was sure that his parents saw the laptop and the internet chiefly as a mechanism for him to do his homework or his special assignments. But his dad had been very clear from the beginning. Allowing him access to the internet had come with one condition. He wasn't to disclose his name or location to anyone through the web, ever. Sometimes their paranoid stranglehold drove him crazy, and his parents would never really say why they did it, other than to say it was to protect him from the world. He grabbed his laptop and packed it in his suitcase on the bed and looked at his watch again, his heart dropping into his stomach. It was 1:09. He only had one more minute before he was supposed to take off, by himself. He sat on the bed and gazed longingly at the old faded door to his room, hoping one or both of his parents would knock. Then he had a scary thought. What if a knock came, but instead of his parents, it was a behemoth United Legion soldier from downstairs? He heard a soft tap on his door, and he rushed to open it. He was overjoyed to see his mom standing there in her warm jacket, with a scarf and a stocking hat. She had her familiar warm smile and was breathing heavily. Before he realized he was doing it, he pulled her head into his chest for a hug. Part of him was afraid that if he let her go, she might leave for good. She squeezed him tight and whispered in his ear, "Let's get back in your room. We don't have much time. Luckily for us, I was already packed for our extended trip." Michael noticed that his mom's gloved hand was holding her brown suitcase, and she had what he recognized as their 72-hour kit backpack over her shoulder. She came in, locked the door behind her, and said, "Okay, let's go. We need to get out of here." Michael thought of the United Legion and their overwhelming presence in the local area, and he wondered how that was going to be possible. But his mother seemed certain they could do it, so he walked over to his suitcase and pulled it off the bed. They made their way to the closet, and Michael's mom pulled down on the candlestick near the closet door. A hidden trap door popped up from the carpeted floor in the far corner of the massive closet. Michael's mom's brown eyes widened, and she put her index finger up and exclaimed, "I almost forgot. I need to get you some warm clothes." Michael stood in the doorway of his closet, gazing anxiously at the door to his room. His mom tapped him from behind on the shoulder, and he jumped. He thought about why the soldiers were there, turned to his mom and said, "Why don't I just go with them? And then at least you and Dad will be safe." His mom shook her head and said, "Absolutely not, Michael. You don't realize all that's at stake. You must trust me, son." He thought of the note and the revelation about his birthday. "But I don't even know if I can trust you anymore. You lied about my birthday. All these years?" She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm sorry. I know that must be hard to take, but we did it for your own good. I will explain more later." He nodded, and she held up his winter jacket. He thought about what came next and found himself staring at the open trapdoor at the other end of his closet. When he didn't respond, she shook the jacket and said, "Snap out of it, Michael. We need to go. Those brutes could come check on us at any minute." He quickly grabbed the jacket, shocked by her tone. "Okay, I am. This is all just happening so fast." She patted his back and said, I know this is hard. I wish there was another way. She shook her head and pointed at where the arm of the jacket fell slightly short of his wrists. Look at that. Even your dad's old jackets don't fit you anymore. Will you stop growing already? You're supposed to stay my little man forever. He smiled faintly, shrugged, and stepped toward the open trapdoor, taking in a deep breath, as if trying to suck in whatever courage he could from the foreboding air. He made his way down a short ladder beneath the trapdoor to a small landing that led to a narrow set of steps below. His mom lowered their suitcases through the hole to him and climbed down the wooden ladder before pulling on the rope to close the trapdoor. It clicked ominously back into place. She put her finger to her lips, stepped in front of him, and motioned for him to carry his suitcase. At first, only a single light bulb dangling from the ceiling illuminated the stairway. But eventually lamps showed up on each wall, and Michael noticed that the narrow stairs and walls were carpeted, as if his parents had soundproofed the area. Even with this soundproofing, his mom still tiptoed. She hadn't spoken since they started their descent into who knows where. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, the ground opened up into a small carved-out rock tunnel, and Michael whispered, "Where did this tunnel come from, anyway?" "We discovered it purely by accident when we inherited the house from Granny, and we decided to use it as an escape tunnel," his mom replied in her quiet, lilting voice. "We think it's part of the Underground Railroad from the mid-1800s. This whole area of Indiana was at the heart of a lot of that activity, especially Fountain City." She pointed to the boarded path ahead. "Your dad and I had to dress it up a bit, but it's surprisingly still in pretty good condition. Just think of how many slaves walked to freedom through this corridor. From our research, this tunnel is very rare, and maybe the only one of its kind." Michael glanced all around, trying not to think about how closed in they were. "How far does it go, and what are we going to do once we have to be above ground, where the Legion has all their drones and scanning kiosks?" His mom began walking again, motioning for Michael to follow. "We have a plan for how to handle those. Your dad has connections. Didn't you ever wonder why the United Legion was never suspicious of your dad's military record?" "Yes, I did, actually. Does he have like an old military buddy who can make fake records and stuff?" "That's right," she said. "Although he's not really that old. Your dad trained him, and he's someone we trust completely. This is something to remember, Michael. You must be careful who you trust in this world. I never thought I would say that, given that I was raised to trust first and only think the best of everyone. But I have learned that it's a balance. You must also be wise about the realities of the world and those who walk on it. Anyway, our friend Peter is one of those few that I would stake my life on being trustworthy in all things. He has created new alternative identities that we can use that should keep the Legion off our trail, at least for a while." Michael thought about what his dad had told him about trusting Peter back at the house. That makes sense. This is all just so unreal. The jagged tunnel suddenly became noticeably darker, and Michael realized that the chain of lamps had disappeared. His mom pulled out a small LED lantern to help light the path, but Michael was feeling a bit claustrophobic. The plywood track had run out, and the path underneath was dirt, so they had to resort to carrying their suitcases. Michael had offered to switch suitcases since hers was heavier. The time passed slowly. They had been walking for roughly 20 minutes now, and Michael's sore arms were screaming at him. "Does this tunnel ever end?" he asked. "I need some fresh air. Can't we take that door we passed back there up to the surface?" "I'm not sure where the tunnel ends. Unfortunately, your father and I never came this far before. But Peter told us to find a specific door. It has a carved sun design on it," she answered. Michael thought of the fact that his dad was missing from this occasion, and this prompted thoughts of the Legion soldiers and the nasty-sounding crows. Why had they come? The soldiers had said they were there to collect Michael for a United Legion Youth Scholarship Program, but that was probably just a front for some brainwashing factory they brought teenagers to. And what would happen to his dad? A sickly feeling came over him. Was he betraying him by leaving him behind? His mind flashed back to his last moments with him before he and his mom were forced to escape. His mom had been getting the soldiers some food, and his dad had used American Sign Language to communicate. They had all learned ASL to allow them to converse with his Aunt Jenna. His dad had signed, "Remember all we have taught you. I'm proud to be your father. I love you." As the memory lingered, Michael choked back his emotions and glanced at his mom, who was studying the walls of the tunnel carefully. He thought about the soldiers back at the house and wondered how it had played out. Surely if the Legion wanted him, they wouldn't harm his dad. But what would he do if they threatened to hurt his dad, or worse, unless Michael turned himself over to them? He knew he wouldn't hesitate to surrender himself to save his dad's life. The thought of that scenario gave him chills. A few minutes later, something caught Michael's eye, and he motioned for his mom to stop. There was a small object moving on the trail ahead. At first he thought it was a mouse, but he soon discovered that it was a bird, which was sitting there looking directly at him as if it had been waiting for them. Michael recognized it from pictures he had seen. It was a nightingale, but it had white feathers and a faint golden glow all around it. It took flight, pausing directly in front of him. Its eyes almost seemed human. Not that they had a pupil or the shape of a human eye, but there was an intelligence behind them that he couldn't put his finger on. Was it smiling? How can a bird smile? The bird's tiny beak opened and it chirped a beautiful melody that soared up to a final high note at the end. It was mesmerizing, and Michael felt more at ease now. A thought came to him in a soft, male voice with a rich English accent. Please do not utter a word regarding my presence. My arrival will be announced to all in due time. Remember to trust your instincts, young master, and know that I will always be here by your side.